Okay, small change of plans. This OnePlus 7 Pro has to go back tomorrow, and I'm not gonna get my own one before after Computex, and well, I have to fly on Sunday, so I don't simply have any more time to get this done, so therefore I'm not gonna edit all the questions in like I wanted to. So you can't read them and I don't have time for timecode. So what I'm gonna do is I will just read off all the questions and then simply answer them as quick as possible. There will still be my kind of typical categories, so pretty much a general section, then for the display, for the sound and all so on. So if you skip through the video, you should get it done, and I also don't have a kind of chance for a second attempt, so this one has to work out. So let's actually already start off with the first question. What's the main difference between the OnePlus 7 Pro and the regular OnePlus 7, which actually sounds odd that it's the regular OnePlus 7, right? But everyone usually then doesn't really know if it's meant about the Pro or the non Pro. So, okay. Main differences, well, the Pro is bigger, it's heavier, it has a 6.7 edge display without the notch compared to the 6.4 inch flat display with a teardrop notch. Then we also get WQHD Plus with 90 Hz AMOLED, but that's the same thing for both. I mean, AMOLED. And then a 4000 mAh battery compared to 3700 mAh. And then the wide angle camera. That is not really an omission because you don't really lose out much on that. And then the 3x zoom. So that's the main difference, obviously, besides the price. Now, next thing would be the general stuff that people wanted to know, or I guess people want to know. Okay, what's in the box? Well, you get the phone, you get this clear case that I actually like quite a lot. It works out good. Then you also get, well, no dongle in this case, but you get a warp charger with 30 watts, you get the cable, and, well, maybe some manual or something, so nothing special. Like I said, there is no dongle in it, which I actually would have answered already my next question. Is there a dongle in the box? No, it's not for some reason, so that's super disappointing. Netflix HD support? Yes, it does. Google Cam API support? Yes, as well. Wireless charging? No. Official IP rating? No, but, well, it is pretty much just as proof as all the other phones these days, but, well, no official rating. Just so you know that, but a little bit of a drop into water or something like that shouldn't damage it. And since none of the actual IP rated phones have a kind of warranty on that, but I know a lot of people just have a better mindset, just want to know that it has it officially, but yeah, it has not. Does it support HDMI output? Yes, it does, but there is no kind of extra mode for that, so it pretty much just mirrors what you see on the display. That is fine though. What colors and versions are there? Well, there is a 6GB version with 128GB, which is only available in mirror gray. Then there is a mid-tier, which is 8GB with 256GB. That one is available in all colors. So the matte one that I have, the Nebula Blue, then the glossy mirror black or mirror gray, and then also the almond. That, if I didn't get that wrong, even though I held it in my hand, I didn't really check it much because I thought it would be a matte one, should actually also be glossy. And then we have the biggest version with 12 gigs of RAM and 256GB of storage. Well, that's only Nebula Blue, which is the version that I actually had. And talking about those versions, people have asked me which one should I get for. Well, I would recommend you to go for the mid-tier, because I don't think the 12GB are worth it extra. And for me especially, there is no other chance, since I wanted the mirror gray because of the grip. I think the glossy ones are just grippier, because the matte one with warm hands feels definitely better and it feels a little bit more premium and is grippy, but with colder hands I don't want to risk it there. I found the glossy one to be better. Next thing, I've talked already about the finish and the grip. The matte one not that grippy, the glossy one more grippy, at least in more situations for me. Is the storage expandable? No, it's not. OnePlus, it never was. And then highlights or deal breakers, not in that regard. For some people it might be, well, the IP rating. For some people, wireless charging, which is just for a lot of people the one thing that kind of distinguishes the Flagship from this phone, but not for me. Now, design. Is it too big? I think for a lot of people it will be too big, especially if you want a more normal sized phone, and which pretty much is these days normal. 6.4 is your limit, then this one will be too big. And that brings me to the next question. Is it too heavy? With 203 grams it might be for some people, but I, for example, noticed after a few days of use, especially when I use it like in the evening on the couch or something like that, holding it for a longer period of time in just one hand, it can get a little bit fatiguing. If you just use it like this and then use it with the second hand, it's not that much of an issue. But I think for some people it will be. Obviously not for the people who usually like big phones anyways. Is it top heavy? Now that's something that I just wanted to get cleared. Because in my video I said it's top heavy, but it's not top heavy because of the weight distribution. The weight distribution is centered, but due to it being so long, and usually at least me holding it like it's maybe to the center or a little bit below, it feels like it would kind of dip off. But it's not really top heavy, but it due to the length is like pretty much all those tall phones. How's the one-hand usage, and is there a one-handed mode? Well, there is no one-handed mode. But I think actually, especially if you like me, use Smart Task Launcher. So I'm just gonna call this out once again, Smart Task Launcher, which allows me to have like side swipe gestures that I can access apps through, or also have the back button and so on, all from the sides in the center. And I've showed this in so many videos, but I never actually made a more updated version of this video that I made like 5 years ago. It allows, for me at least, for my normal use, to actually use bigger phones with one hand as well. But for most other people, especially if you want to kind of get to the bottom of the opposite side that you usually hold your phone with in the hand, it's not easy. It's not easy, especially if you want to go all the way down this. Keep that in mind. How's the button placement? Power button, in my opinion, great position. You can easily also reach the alert slider. But then if you hold it like this, getting to the volume rocker, not that easy, I would say. I would wish for all those to be on the right side, but I kind of get, especially if you want to kind of clamp them down in a tripod or something like that, in a holder. It's okay that the center is kind of off, but I would have actually preferred the volume rocker on the side where the alert slider is and the alert slider on the other side. But well, OnePlus does it like this, but at least the power button, which is very important, has a good position. How good is the, let me actually turn this on now. How good is the in-display fingerprint reader? I'm gonna say this. Let me show this. I think it's great. Once it's on, bam. Okay. Once again, bam. I think it's absolutely great. Once this is on, but you have to wait for this and you have to think about it. But I mean, this position will get into your normal usage pretty quickly, and I pretty much always hit it right. Now, the next question is, how good does it work with wet or oily hands? I've tried that in my live stream, and I definitely noticed that it's weaker. But what you have to actually keep in mind, if it's a little bit sweaty, it's actually not a problem. But what I met as an issue, I did it like this, so more with the upper side. But if you have it flat like this, it also works with sweaty hands. So that was the issue for me. I did it like this instead of like this. Then it works a little bit harder with oily hands or so. But with oily or especially really wet hands, it does not work that well. Definitely there it can become an issue. Is the is the fingerprint reader noticeably faster than on a 60? It definitely is. It is way faster. This is pretty much just as fast as the fastest one that we had on the back on phones. Okay, next question. How good is it to kind of unlock directly out of your pocket? What I mean, for example, if you have it in your pocket, you pull it out and then this obviously turns, and I have to say it's a very normal, a pretty nice way, especially if you have maybe the case where you have more grip, it will easier hold it. I have to say this works very conveniently. The next thing is there face unlock? Yes, it is. How quick is it? Let's test it. So I'm just gonna turn it on now, and then I'm gonna swipe up, and the camera is pointing towards me. So you see, what pretty much happens is it goes up and it goes down. So I would say this is, let's try it like this for once. I think it's quick enough, and what I've actually noticed, especially if you are not in a completely silent environment and you do this, especially if it does maybe unlock on its own with the fingerprint reader sometimes, this happens and you don't even notice it, especially since you usually focus on the center of the screen. But, well, the next question is, can it be fooled with a picture or a video? Yes, it can. Okay, the next question is, how secure is the whole thing? Because people actually told me that if you have the in-display fingerprint reader, it can be fooled with a photo as well. But here's the thing, you can easily get a photo of a person's face. But I don't think it's that easy to get a high quality picture of someone's thumb. So I think it's safe enough. Next thing, does it work with glasses? Yes, I've tried it. Especially also with sunglasses it worked, because it's maybe not the most secure thing, but with sunglasses it sometimes took a little bit longer or you had to watch straight onto it. So it doesn't work as from a good distance or from an angle like it does without glasses. If you didn't train it with glasses, because I didn't even train it with glasses, then I think it should be working even better. Now, how's the new vibration motor? That's something that I can't demonstrate you because you wouldn't feel it, but it's definitely way better than it was before. And this is almost as good as something like the Taptic engine, because it gives you it feels like a movement, like some real Taptic, and it's not like just a vibration that it was before, so noticeably better here. What Gorilla Glass version is it using on the back and on the front? Well, that's the one thing that people aren't quite as decided about, because I read somewhere it's 6 on the back, it's 6 on the front and 5 on the back. Some people say it's 5 on both sides. I mean, OnePlus actually even told me it, but I forgot it. I'm not so 100% sure, and that just didn't get an answer in time because I actually didn't even answer. I forgot it. I mean, question it, I forgot it. But even if it's 5 or 6, I don't really see a difference in terms of 5 or 6 in normal use. I don't think it will be a big thing, because for someone also said, for example, why does it have only 5 if the 6T had 6? That would be kind of a step backwards. It's not. Is there a notification LED? No, there is not, but Edge light or Edge notification light, Horizon light or something is coming. It's not available just yet, so I can't show these. But yeah, next question, deal breakers or highlights? Well, generally when it comes to the design, not something that I can think of right now. Okay, display. Is it really as good as so many people say? I'm gonna say absolutely, because it's great and bright, because it gets about 710x, so it's not the brightest one. And someone actually asked me if it gets brighter if you watch HDR content, and yes it does, but that's the thing. I measure all mine at manual brightness modes, at whatever I can get maximum out of, and then I measure it. And there I measured 710 lux, where I measure, for example, 790 on the 6T, so it's actually not that bright. With the HDR, in HDR it will get brighter, but that is something that you only will get for a split second, so that's not something you will get all the time. So that's why this is not the brightness that I see. If it just gets it for a moment in a video, this is not what I will say is the maximum brightness. Then the next thing, how good is the calibration? Well, we have different ones. For example, we have Vivid, we have Natural, and we have the one where we can change between AMOLED White Gamut, sRGB, or Display P3, also with one. But I would just tell you that most people will be absolutely happy and pleased with the Vivid one, especially since the white point is great, it's clean, great high quality display, calibration is absolutely top, and like I said, it's also a little bit adjustable. Now, which options do we have in terms of resolutions? So I guess most people know that. We have the options, for example, for an automatic switch between the resolutions, for example, games and videos and so on, but also just to keep it at Quad HD Plus all the time or at FHD Plus all the time. And for the refresh rate, we have 90 or 60. Obviously, in a game where it can't handle 90, it will just use 60. So people also ask me, does 90 Hertz work always? Yes, it does. It works system-wide, pretty much just like on a PC. The only moment where it does not work is, for example, well, in games, because those usually don't even have the power or they don't support it. But don't worry, like you can see here, I mean, you can't see it since this video is just 60 frames, but it is buttery smooth and it works out all the time. But to the next question, well, how does it look with the curved display? Well, you can maybe even see it here already, the glare. You can see this, see this. Now the curve is not quite as pronounced like on the Samsung S10 series, so it's a little bit wider, so you get a little bit of a wider glare. If you like it or not. I mean, personally, I got over that already with the S9. I don't think it's a big issue here, and here it didn't bother me so much. Yes, if you have light from the top or something like that, it will be a glare issue. Depending on the angle where you hold it, it gets a bit less of an issue. For me, not. But I absolutely get it if it is for some, because I'm not the biggest fan of it. Even though I have to say that due to this subtle curve, especially since I do so many side swipes, this feels way more natural than doing it from a flat display. So the way I use my phone, I actually prefer it right now this way. And also what people wanted to know, is 90 Hertz really that obvious? Does it make such a big difference? If the display is important for you, because this is the thing, I've said this already, the 845 already was pretty much a limit what we could handle in terms of performance visibly on the screen. And therefore, the 855 didn't really bring anything new to the table because you didn't see more than those 60 frames. But with those 90 hertz, you definitely see things looking a lot smoother and faster. For me, it's a big difference. But there's also people, like I've seen in the comments, that say, I don't really see it, I don't bother, I don't care about it. Well, those people, no. But if you are someone who especially also maybe plays games on a monitor and who likes refresh rates, and someone who puts a lot of effort into that, then you will absolutely appreciate it. If you say, I don't care about it, well, no. But you also don't have to use it. That's the great thing. It's an option. So what does HDR10 Plus bring really to the table? I mean, for me, not much, because I don't usually watch HDR content on a phone for a long enough period to make or break it. So the normal brightness, the normal colors, and the normal calibration is what's important for me, and that is absolutely great. And well, HDR, if it's important for you, then we'll just bump things. But I don't think this is a huge, crucial issue unless you are someone who watches HDR content all the time. Anything else, though, in terms of deal breakers? Well, for some people, it might be the brightness. That's not good enough. I mean, in normal situations, we're not talking about HDR content. For some people, it might be the edge lit or the edge display, and for some people, it also just might be the sheer size of the screen. But highlights definitely 90 hertz, quality resolution, great calibration, and also adjustability. Sound is the next thing. How is the sound? Well, first of all, we have a bottom firing one that they switched because it was usually on this side, but they switched it to this, which makes sense because they said a lot of people have been complaining if they play games like this, they always blocked it. Well, since I don't usually game much, I held it always like this when I watch videos, and then it was great because it did kind of reflect here a little bit more than it does right now here. So I was fine with this position, but I absolutely get why it's here, and then also the earpiece. So with games, you shouldn't really block it. So how's the actual maximum volume? Let me get into that and just give you the demo. Where is it? We could actually use a different song for once, right? Okay, so about the volume, well, that's the thing. If you just have normal stereo sound from music, the volume is good. It's not on an S10 Plus level, it's not on a Pixel 3 level, it's not on a Razr 2 level or something like that, but it's usually easily more than enough, and you don't need maximum volume. But what I've now noticed, and I've said this in the preview, and it seems to still be a thing even after the update, where I hoped it would have changed, is that on some certain videos, actually on quite a, I would say like almost on 50% of all the videos that I watched on YouTube, we don't get that same volume. And then if I compare this with my OnePlus 5T, which is always the same volume, this one just isn't that loud, and then you then need full maximum volume to get close to what the 5T has, which means that if you have that louder content and the less loud content, you have to kind of fiddle around with the volume all the time, which is a little bit annoying, I have to say, because I'm not quite sure why it is. Maybe it is because it is sometimes the stereo content, because right from the left, and therefore it's not quite as loud. Not 100% sure, I didn't quite get behind it. So usually it's even when we have it something a little bit quieter, also loud enough. But it's just, like I said, a little bit annoying that you have to adjust it all the time. How's the sound? Not nearly, like I said, on the Pixel 3, S10 Plus or iPhone or also Razr level. Because it lacks a little bit in terms of richness, a little bit of warmth. It feels a little bit thin. Not kind of shallow or hollow, and it doesn't really distort much, maybe on some certain things at the highest volumes, but usually it's not an issue. And we have 3 presets to adjust that sound, but there's pretty much no significant difference that I could even speak of. Okay, the next thing. In comparison to the 60, how is volume, bass, and clarity? Volume, well, and everything turns out to be normal. It's louder. The bass is, I mean, the clarity is better, but it lacks a little bit of kind of like warmth, which I think the 60 had just about the same. But generally, the speaker definitely is better when things work out. If they don't work out, like I said, when it's not that loud, it's still quite close. But then sometimes the 60 is just louder because for some reason the way it works. Well, no dongle. What now? Well, I guess you either use their kind of Bullet 2 wireless, or you get any kind of sort of Bluetooth headphone. You buy a dongle, and it doesn't have to be the one from OnePlus. So you could just buy something else. But you need that because out of the box, or unless you maybe have USB-C headphones, which pretty much no one has or no one should have, in my opinion. I don't like that whole about the idea about it. So you have to just find a different solution. So deal breakers, highlights. Highlights that finally we have stereo, that it sounds good but not great. I mean, I would say it's a very good speaker, but for a stereo speaker it's just good. And I would almost, like I said, I think I've said this somewhere, I would say it's like the third worst stereo speaker system. I think the only one that I can think of right now was, for example, a Mi Mix 2S, and then maybe, what else was it? There was one more that wasn't all that good. I can't really remember, so it's not important, but it would have been kind of on that level. Yeah, the Mate 20 Pro, that one also had not that good of a stereo speaker system, but deal breaker as well, no headphone jack, no dongle. That's that. But the quality itself and the volume shouldn't be an issue. Now the next thing, performance. Does UFS free storage really make a difference? Well, I've mostly noticed that if you have apps that need longer to open sometimes, like also games, but just apps that need a little bit more time, it is noticeably faster. But if it's significantly, I don't think so, because you can notice that, okay, this was faster than usual. But I don't think it's this speed of that we usually get these days, it makes a difference. What I can tell you about the speed is, if I have that picture up, I made a screenshot once. The speeds are, I can show you these. So sequential read is at 1446 and the write speed's at 440, if that's important for you. I mean, those numbers don't really mean much to me, because in normal use, I don't really feel a big difference. Sometimes, like I said, it's noticeable that especially all those apps that load quickly anyways, that little bit, a fraction of a second that you save up, not really who I'm talking about. So how reaction fast is it, or how snappy is it? I have to say it's super snappy, because, for example, let's launch a few things and let's see, you can quickly switch between the apps like this, also different ways, and you can go through all of this. So it feels buttery smooth, it feels very snappy, apps launch quickly. Let me actually check, just so I don't have a weird site opened. Okay, so as you can see here, everything responds really quick. We can launch apps. I mean, killer daily use performance. And like I said, how big is the difference for 90 Hz? For me, it makes a huge difference, because right now, for example, today I got the Asus ZenFone 6. And well, with just an IPS display with 60 Hz, which usually already feels less smooth than an AMOLED with 60 Hz, the difference with 90 Hz and AMOLED is, I think, for me it's huge, but it might not be for everyone. How's the comparison to other phones? Well, at the moment there is nothing that comes close. There is the Razer 2 or the Razer 1 that feel even smoother due to 120 Hz, but those with the performance of this one can't quite compete. So at the moment, I would prefer the 855 with 90 Hz on the OnePlus 7 compared to what the Razer has to offer, because we don't get quite the smoothness because of less Hertz, but it's just generally, after all, much faster. And that has maybe to do with the UFS storage. It feels snappier. How warm does it get? Does it overheat? I tried playing games and I think it got warm, but it didn't get to an issue or something like that. It was no perceivable issue. I mean, at some point it will throttle, especially if it's hot in the summer, but I don't think that should be an issue, because you still have so much power left that most games don't even fully take advantage out of that power. So how good is it for games? It's top. I mean, at the moment, there is not really a better solution. Yes, there will be something like a Nubia Red Mouse Magic that has the cooler inside, or something else, but this is still, at the moment, amongst the best, especially since it at least supports 90 Hz, which some games it sometimes might also support a little bit more frequently. So highlights and deal breakers in terms of performance, I don't see anything. Highlights though, 90 Hz smoothness, UFS storage, great. Okay, battery, how quickly does it charge? About 1 hour and 20, and about, like, I think in 30 minutes it was at 65%. What I've noticed is that after like 80%, it gets noticeably slower than some other phones with a quicker charge, but I mean, yeah, it's still quick. Not standby drain, but the drain for YouTube video. So I did it in Quad HD with 90 Hz, but I checked it on the typical 1080p video that I do, and there it took 8%, but when I switched it down to 1080p with 60 Hz to check that, it was at 7%, so that saved up 1%, but yeah, that's maybe even error of margin of error. Okay, daily use, battery life, well, I have to say that I know a lot of people actually say it's not good, but I simply, with my use, can't confirm that because I used it a few days also with different resolutions and refresh rates. But what I get in daily use, I would say 5.5 hours on mobile data. But over a normal day in mixed use, I see more like 6.5, actually closer to 6.5 in some situations. I even once reached almost 7 hours with 6 hours and 50. So I'm just gonna say moderately 6 hours, maybe a little bit more in mixed use for me. That contains a few pictures, a little bit of video, some YouTube, browsing, social media, and all these kind of things. So for me, that's great. So standby drain looks like this. 7 hours, it was like 3%. So it's still typically what you usually get on most other phones, because what I usually get is like 0.5% per hour. That's kind of in line what we get here. Now the comparison to the different resolutions and refresh rates. So I would say like this. If we are gonna say 6 hours, just to have an even number. If you have then Quad HD with 60 Hertz, expect about 1.5 hours more. I would say at least 1 hour, if not 1.5 hours more, if you just switch down the refresh rate. Now, if you then also switch down the resolution, I would say maybe like half an hour extra. Because what has a bigger impact on the drain is 90 Hertz compared to the resolution change. Because the resolution is the thing you usually save up a little bit on GPU power, but all those pixels still have to be lit up. But since they are not different, it's just less tasking on the GPU, but they still have to light up. Because usually, because a resolution change doesn't just mean that you don't have them turned on. So what I also got here, for example, on Wi-Fi, Quad HD, 90 Hertz, like 9 to even 10 hours. I would almost say 10 hours is pretty easily to be able to be achieved. And now here's the thing, 1080p 60, 12 hours. So here's the thing, for all those people who say the battery life is bad, if you tune it down to what you usually get anywhere else, 1080p and 60, this gets you better battery life than most other phones. And if you even go to Quad HD with 60, which doesn't make so much sense, you can still get about the battery life of the best flagships out there. And someone, for example, said in a podcast that with 5.5 hours, he doesn't think it's good battery life. And if you tune it down to 1080p 60, where he gets like 8 hours, then battery life becomes good. Now, the only phones that I usually know that can get like 8 hours are Huawei phones, but nothing else. So I can't say that this is good. This is already flagship level in terms of battery life, and it doesn't matter if it's a flagship phone or anything like that. So might not be good enough for some people. I totally get it. So highlights or deal breakers: it charges quick. Standby drain is good. Daily life, battery life for me is absolutely good. Okay, so I'm gonna make software quick because I actually wanted to show off all the options, but that would take way too long, and this video is already way too long. So updates, how long and how quick? Usually pretty quickly, but not the fastest one actually anymore. But what you get, at least promised, is 2 years of updates, so bigger update versions, and 3 years like security update patches. But what we've seen in the past, since the 3T actually already even got Android Pie, you could maybe think of even longer. And if you are okay using custom ROMs, even way further. So what navigation options do you have? Just to cover a few of the main things. Well, you have actually 3, so let me show off these. So you have the navigation gestures that I use at the moment. Where is it? It's not under display because it's under gestures. Okay, so you have this where you have the buttons. You have this, which is pretty much the pill, but you can still switch the buttons, and then you have the gestures, which is what I use. So those are the 3 solutions. And I actually don't know any other phone that offers you 3 different solutions. So actually I like the gestures here, how they work. Okay, how good is the software in comparison to the competition? I would say at the moment for me it's place number 1, maybe with a tie with Samsung's Android One UI. Now, and some people say, why? Can you explain this a little bit further? So I'm gonna say it like this. I actually like some of the convenient solutions, a little bit more features that are actually quite cool that Samsung offers. This is a little bit more on a minimalistic approach, doesn't have quite the theme support or something like that, like Samsung does in some smaller, actually pretty nice extra settings, but therefore it's bloat free, and usually you get updates quicker and longer. So generally, for most people, this will be number one. But I like Android, I like One UI, and I mix this up all the time. But I would definitely like for it to be less bloaty and so on. So that's why they are, after all, the little bit that Samsung has as an advantage in terms of the extra features, it loses out a little bit in terms of bloat, so that's why they are on par. Now, call quality, it was fine, it was good. Anyone could hear me quite fine, I could hear them fine, so nothing special to say here. Wi-Fi and data reception was absolutely strong, never any problems. It was just as good as the best ones that I usually have. Wi-Fi as well, but Wi-Fi maybe not quite as strong, like for example a Samsung or a Huawei, where I just had them recently, because I got for about like 14 megabytes per second on my Wi-Fi network, where I, for example, on a Samsung got like 18. It's not a huge difference, but well, but therefore the reception was also very strong. So here, deal breakers or highlights. Yeah, software. The whole software is a highlight. Nothing to complain here. Now, camera. Well, I just today actually, but not for you, published my camera review that is 30 minutes long. So there you will get all the informations, but to quickly get into that, which actually won't be that quick, it will be quick, but it will take a while, but I'm gonna get quickly through those. How does the app look and what can it do? I'm gonna get into the camera view, so watch that. It can do the most basic stuff, a few extra options, but it's not the most, it's not the best or kind of the most feature-packed app. How intuitive is it to use? Pretty intuitive, because it's pretty straightforward, it doesn't have too much stuff going on. How quickly does the camera go out and in? Well, here you can see that. Let's try this once again. Good, I would say. I think it's like 1.3 seconds or something like that. Does it cover dust and dirt? And here I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no, because every time I open this up, this is totally clean. So actually that's a benefit, because what I usually do every time I use the selfie mode on a phone, I kind of clean the lens. But since this now is closed and doesn't get dirty, because here I also never see dirt, because it is sealed and also actually water kind of resistant, even though not officially. OnePlus told me that nothing will go, and every time I do this, I never saw any dirt or dust in there. Obviously, if you now get dust into it, some, if it's very small, could get inside, but usually it should actually able to be like kind of cleaned off. But yeah, don't take it too far. Someone also asked me if you can do this manually, push it in. It doesn't really like that, because then this, and I don't want to show it because it was a very awkward thing when I tried the first time, because it tries to push it back out when it wants to go in. So try to avoid that. Like I said, and well, does it? What it does, for example, if you drop it, it will kind of get that speed due to the accelerometer, and then it will actually automatically drop. I once got it to actually like this to get close, but usually it's not good, not strong enough. So maybe I also just hit the button. So not 100% sure about that. So okay, let's get quickly into those things, into the questions about video first. Does it have a pro mode for video? Unfortunately not. Video limitations, well, 4K 60 is limited to 5 minutes and 4K 30 limited to 10 minutes. If you use the third-party app, not an issue. Which cameras can be used for video? Well, the normal one and the zoom, but it's actually not using the zoom camera, it's just using a software crop, because I didn't actually point this out in my video, but the quality of the zoom in video is not good. It gets super grainy. But unfortunately, there is no support for the wide angle cam. But since that one doesn't offer good quality, I think that's actually kind of fine. How kind of stable is 4K 60 without EIS, but with obviously OIS? And I would say if you have kind of steady hands, if you normally use without smaller jitters, I actually like really what we have seen here. You can watch this on the demo, because it is not nearly as shaky as I would have expected, besides some bigger shakes that I think are natural, but those smaller ones I actually don't see, so the OIS actually covers that pretty well. How good is EIS? Watch it once again in the demo. I don't like EIS on OnePlus phones, because when you move it like faster, you get this motion blur, and I don't really like it. It doesn't also feel that natural, a little bit more robotic. Is there a crop in 4K 30 with EIS? Yes, there is with 4K 60, not really. Then how good's the quality in general? I would say it's pretty good, but it's not on a flagship level. Does the front camera use EIS? It does. and unless you give it like a small quick bump where it gets there's also this little bit of motion blur, it's actually pretty nice and stable, so I like that. How's the microphone quality is really good. It's clean. It could be sometimes a little bit richer, but I also noticed the way I hold my phone makes up for that, because sometimes the way I hold it, it was actually a very rich sound, but for some reason sometimes it wasn't. So just think about where you put your hand. Try to play a little bit, because sometimes it might actually help if you kind of cup also your hand for the microphone, which is usually a thing for the speaker, unless if you maybe make it like this, because I think if you make it like this, it sounded thinner than when I held it like this. Okay. So how's the front video? Generally pretty good, but I really would have wished for 4K and maybe an autofocus, but otherwise it's pretty good. But the crop is pretty heavy, and therefore you have to stretch it fully, so selfie stick is recommended. Okay, photos. How's the front cam? Very good. I had some exposure issues and skin tones, so I think like the color signs, especially for skin tones, is not quite what they are strong at there, or they need some improvement. But otherwise, good bokeh mode, I like that. How good is low light without the night mode? Actually, there it can held up with the better ones out there, because due to the OIS, you get actually quite good photos, and I don't really like the next question or the result of it. How good is low light with the night mode? As I said in my camera review, it usually tries to kind of artificially sharpen the picture and contrast boost it, and it doesn't actually seem like it's doing anything on the camera inside itself, because the picture gets snapped like in less than a second, where other good ones like Huawei or Google take like 2 or 3 or 5 and even sometimes 8 seconds. So I don't think it actually does much, so I'm not the biggest fan of it, but an update that is actually supposed to come like in a day or two should improve that even further, but I can't that. So what I'm reviewing still here is a version 9.54, which is the same that I used for my camera review. Okay, so how good is the wide angle camera? Not good, because it has an autofocus and usually is kind of like sharp enough in the middle, but the outside gets very blurry, so that's not a good thing. Usually everyone else uses like fixed wide angle cameras. That's what it should have done as well. How good is the main camera? That one is very good, but not quite flagship level. Not right now. They can fix it with software, and the Gcam, what I've heard from some people already, when I tested it, the version wasn't quite good enough yet, but they say that usually it gets way more detailed and way better. And if it is that big of a difference like they say, then it should be on a flagship level, but out of the box with their own software at the moment, not quite. How good is the 3x zoom? Well, something that we just discovered today is that it actually is a 2.2 times zoom, and the rest is done with crop. But I have to say, and you can see this with my samples, that it is noticeably better if you use the 3x zoom compared to what you would do if you just take the normal picture and then zoom it up to 3 times. So it is still, in my opinion, a legit enough 3x zoom, and I think 3 times is more useful than a 2 times zoom is. HDR, recommendable or not, depends. I would actually wish for an option that it saves up HDR and non-HDR, just so you can then choose, because sometimes HDR was better, sometimes it wasn't. For the portrait mode, there is such an option to keep both, but not in HDR from what I see. Is there an AI mode? No, it's not. In my opinion, it's actually fine. Compared to the 6T, how does it fare? I can't really remember the 6T that well, and I couldn't do the same picture side by side. So, but I would still say that the main camera got better, video got better, focus got better, low light didn't really change much with the night mode. With normal, yes, but generally I would say it's better. Some say it's not better, but it's not worse. Compared to the Mi 9, at this point in time, using the stock camera app, I would say the Mi 9 is better in terms of consistency for the front cam, for the main cam, a little bit more natural colors. HDR I don't like so much on MIUI anymore, and the video I slightly prefer on OnePlus because it's not quite as nicely stabilized. But even though I don't like the stabilization on OnePlus either, so I just would take actually 4K 60 if it wouldn't be limited. But I think maybe the more capable, easier to use video would be on the Mi 9. Well, is it finally a flagship camera? I mean, if you watch the whole part, you guess. Yeah, we guess not. Not yet, or maybe that. DxO Mark, what's my opinion on that? Well, I'm not saying that their specific tests are BS, but I definitely think that their final result is kind of clickbait, or it's kind of a way for them to get money. Because if they punch out this number, it doesn't really mean much, because 111 that they gave this phone is not what it would really be if you compare it to those phones at that level, because those, like for example in Samsung S10, that is kind of there, a P30, Mate 20 Pro, they at least have some flagship qualities in some aspects, maybe not on all, but this one just is completely at every point in time just slightly below the flagship level. So DxO Mark, the final score, I don't give an about. Highlights and deal breakers. Highlights, I like the zoom. I like the general quality, it's consistent, you get good shots, but never really amazing, like breathtaking shots. But deal breakers, for some people it might just be that it's not a full flagship camera. And maybe the wide angle isn't good, if that's important. So, highlights, let's get to those, to the main highlights generally taken. So, we get a pretty much completely bezel-less phone, little bit of a chin there, but it's notchless. It's then great in terms of build quality. We get double QHD plus with 90 Hz on a beautiful display. We get stereo speakers, we get killer performance, and we get pretty much the best software out there. But actually my list isn't that short in terms of deal breakers, especially from the ones that I know what they are for people. Size and weight. Edge display. Then also the missing official IP rating. Not a basic issue for me. Same as, for example, the next thing. Well, no wireless charging. So many people say it's a must-have. Well, it's not a have here. Okay, then the battery life for some people, it seems to be an issue. But, I mean, get it down. If you really need that amazing battery life to 1080p 60, which is what you get on pretty much any other phone as well, or Quad HD 60, especially with Quad HD 60, you will be at the best of the best. And I actually think that it is not an issue at all, because I actually didn't expect the battery life nearly to be as good as it is. Because what I wished for like was maybe 4.5, maybe 5 hours would have been super nice on a whole day, and I get like easy 1 or 1.5 hours more. So I'm actually impressed by the battery life. I did not even expect it nearly to be as good as it is. And then, well, no headphone jack integrated on the phone, not even with a dongle. Camera might be a deal breaker if you want the best of the best. Then, especially if you don't want the pop-up camera, for me it's actually not an issue, but especially if you also maybe want direct face unlock. I'm not talking about face unlock because that's there, but a direct face unlock without any kind of action, if it would be a notch or something like that. And then if you simply maybe don't like an in-display fingerprint reader. And now I'm actually pretty much done after 42 minutes, which is actually quicker than I expected it to be. I hope it wasn't maybe too rushed or too long in some situations, but I definitely think I covered a lot of questions. Now, I'm pretty sure I did forget something, because it would be pretty much impossible to cover everything. But if those things are the things, and like I said, I am a little bit under time restrictions, I don't have that much time, I might have forgotten something. If you want to know something else, ask me in the comments. I'm hoping that I will be able to answer it, or someone else, because a lot of people already own it by now and might be able to help you. Yeah, maybe the last question, should you buy it? Well, I am gonna, and I'm gonna buy the 8GB version Mirror Gray, like I said, because the thing is just that I'm gonna get into that a little bit more in my review part 2, that I'm not quite sure when I will be able to do, because I have to return this, like I said. But I got actually over the last 10 days that I used it, or I think 11 days by now, used to the size, which is actually odd because I did not expect it to work out this good, especially with the case, where it gives me like so much better grip, and for some reason the balancing act with using it in one hand due to kind of an easier grip allows me also to have a better kind of weight distribution, and it was actually so much better. The only thing that annoyed me a little bit was the whole volume changing thing, but everything else, like the design, I like the design, I like the in-display fingerprint reader, I love the display, I love the performance, the speaker is good if it doesn't annoy me, performance is great, the battery life is great, the camera is more than good enough for me, so I am super happy. But like I said with the deal breakers, it is not a phone for everyone. More about that in my review part 2, but that was it, and I am done, and I hope you liked it. Maybe leave it a thumbs up, reshare this video because that would help me out. But other than that, that's it. Bye.